Hey, and welcome back to your anatomy training. For this one, you'll need either a yoga strap or just a regular old belt looped about a little bit wider than your hips would be great. And you'll step on in. We're gonna be working on the abductors, abductor muscles, the outer hip muscles. So a couple of easy ways to get these muscles strong. We can first start statically, take your feet wide and pull the strap apart. When you pull the strap apart, think about turning the legs slightly inward. We know that TFL, tensor fascia lata, is an abductor. It's also an internal rotator. So by turning the legs inward, you're gonna get more TFL activated. If we wanted to activate more gluteus maximus, we know that that's an external rotator and an abductor, then we would turn our legs out. So for now, let's turn our legs in, shift the body weight onto the right foot, and pull the strap apart with your left leg. For more balance, sometimes taking the arms out like a T, like this, helps for a lot of people. You could also take the hands on the pelvis, anything that works for you. Again, more internally rotated, and you're gonna get more TFL. Gluteus medius and minimus are gonna be activating no matter what. More internally rotated, you'll probably get more of the front fibers of gluteus medius and minimus. More externally rotated, you'll probably get more of the rear fibers. Let's switch to the left leg, pull the strap apart. As you pull the strap apart, think again, internal rotation a little bit so we get that TFL, tensor fascia lata, activated here in this on purpose, okay? Making sure with the internal rotation, we do get more of that versus the gluteus maximus. And you can feel, I feel my gluteus maximus is engaging, but definitely my TFL is working a lot harder. Okay, coming back to center, let's turn the legs out this time and let's see if we can get a little bit more abduction. So you're gonna move out to the side, and think about turning your chest a little to the right this time, like you're looking to your right. And the right foot is turned out as well, also looking to the right. So almost like you're gonna go into flying warrior like this. Okay, so the left leg is externally rotated, right leg is externally rotated, and you're pulling the strap apart. You should feel your left gluteus maximus really strong in this position. Okay, coming back to the center. Again, turning the legs out, transitioning like you're gonna go towards the left here. Pull the strap apart, externally rotating the right leg, so you should see that your thighs are turned out away from each other as you pull the right leg outward, pulling the belt real nice and tight. Activating the gluteus maximus, of course, activating your two gluteus medius and minimus as well. So all the glutes are fired. All right, coming back to center. Whew, okay. Give your abductors a break for a second. Step the legs together. Hold on to the strap. We'll take a breath. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is walk around and pull the strap apart. It's a great way to activate your abductors. Abductors, I've heard these called zombie walks. So what you do is you take your legs, step them apart, pull the strap apart, and then you walk, and as you walk, you pull. You can go backwards, forwards, you can turn around, but you pull side to side, outward. Now, of course, you could be more internally rotated, and you could also be more externally rotated. And of course, if you think about it, when you go forward, that's gonna be more TFL because it's a hip flexor. And when you go back, it's gonna be more gluteus maximus. So there's a couple of things we can think about. When you go back, you could think about internally rotating, and that will activate TFL while activating gluteus maximus, as long as you're pulling it apart, right? Internally rotating will balance activating TFL while activating gluteus maximus. And when you go forward, you could externally rotating, activating TFL because it's hip flexion, activating gluteus maximus because it's externally rotated. So you're pulling apart and stepping forward. All sorts of things you can do. You can externally rotate and extend back. That's gonna be a lot of glutes, right? You're also gonna feel piriformis there and your other external rotators. Internally rotated, pulling apart and stepping forward. Internally rotating, pulling apart. Pulling it apart. And then you could just go side to side like you're pivoting on one foot, forget what these are called. Oh, there's a little carousel name for this. I don't remember what it is. Whew. Okay, whew. We have to go the other direction though on that little carousel situation. So pulling it apart, just replacing which foot is standing. Ooh, okay, outer hips. Now, I've never seen anybody do those in like physical therapy world, those last things, but there is an acrobatic move where two people are doing it and you're going around the inside foot. It's just really great way to get your abductors activated. We're gonna use the belt for one more thing for sure, but put it aside for a second so we can stretch our outer hips. So, easy way to stretch the outer hips is you would crisscross your legs. So if my left foot is forward here, step my right foot off to the side and straighten the legs. So both toes are facing forward. And now I'm stretching the outer left hip primarily. Always tough to stretch the outer hips because right now the gluteus medius and minimus might be stretching, gluteus maximus might be stretching, but you look how much hip flexion I'm in my left leg, my TFL is definitely not stretching. So we know one way to stretch the TFL, which we did in another video. Let's switch legs. It's a very hard muscle to target, but it's a hip flexor. So if you do hip extension, you can typically get at it in some ways. All right, come on up. Let's get back to the belt. Step in the belt, come to all fours. So on all fours, you'll take your right knee to the center line and then pull the strap tight by bringing the left leg off the ground. Okay, so my right knee, if you look, is at the center. Here's my two hands, right knee at the center, and left leg is off to the left, lifted up. You can see it's off and lifted up, and I'm pulling the strap apart, okay? A little internal rotation, a little external rotation, why not? A little internal, external, internal, external. Okay, then release, switch sides, left knee to the midline, pull the strap tight, and take the right leg up and out to the right, pulling it apart. And I'm making sure my knee is not drifting back behind me. It's right in line with my right knee's right in line with the left. A little internal rotation, pull the strap apart. A little external rotation, pull the strap apart. Internal, pull apart. External, pull apart. Internal, pull apart. External, pull apart. And release. Hallelujah. You can feel like when you do all those, if you're pulling apart and rotating, you feel all fibers of your gluteus medius and minimus just firing up like crazy. Let's keep the strap on and place your hands on your right knee. You might have to widen the strap. Mine's as wide as mine will go. And then you're gonna pull the strap tight with your weight in your hands, lift your left leg up and out to the left and pull the strap apart, dorsiflexing and everting the foot. Make sure the leg doesn't drift back behind you like this, then you won't be getting your abductors. You want to get the abductors, so bring the knee forward, and that's specifically going to, keeping the knee forward, TFL is going to fight against the gluteus maximus. Gluteus maximus is a much bigger muscle, right? So it's going to drift you back as it abducts. Okay, come back, but if you activate TFL against it, get nice and strong. Let's go to the other side. Pull the strap apart. Whew. Getting tired. Pull the strap apart. Again, the knee wants to drift back because gluteus maximus has more power than the TFL. Keep the TFL engaged. Keep the knee in hip flexion. Okay. I feel the heat there. Step out of the strap. Let's do a stretch. I'll take the half, I guess, cross-legged position and half figure four. And lean your left heel here a little bit away from the butt so you can lean and bow over to your right. So you see my top legs in figure 4 position, or Agni Stambhasana, ankle to knee in other words. For most of you, sitting your butt up on blankets make your life so much easier, but also make the stretches more effective, okay? Because when you're not up on blankets, if your hips are tight in this position here, then what happens is you start stretching your back muscles instead of your hips. And maybe over time you get deeper into the forward fold, but it's from your spinal muscles getting flexible, not your hips. So we want to make sure we're stretching our hips. So crisscross the opposite way, right heel just outside the hip, left ankle across the knee, and bowing. And if this is too inaccessible, I apologize, there's another option. You could take the foot out in front like this and bow this way. Although if you're not doing the bottom leg, it's probably more effective to bow towards the foot side of the top leg. Whereas this variation is really about getting the outer right hip to stretch, but you can use the other variation to get the top leg to stretch more. Okay, come on up. I think let's skip the strap. Actually, no, let's stay with it. Let's torture ourselves one more time with the strap. So what we'll do is boat pose with a strap around the legs. Pull the strap apart, sit back, dorsiflex the feet. You can have bent knees, or if you want to oscillate, you can go between straight legs, pulling the strap apart, and bent legs, pulling the strap apart. You could also think about external versus internal rotation, perhaps playing with those two. There's an internally rotated variation. Here's an externally rotated. Internal. Pulling it apart the whole time though, that's the game, right? Internal, pulling it apart, external. And then just static, pull it apart. Okay, and release. A couple more important ones that I want to share with you. For this, let's have 2 blocks to start at least. Now, what we'll do is, you can do this on all fours if the standing on 2 feet is too challenging. It'll look like something like this. You'll take your back leg back and you'll open your pelvis and close it like so. Okay, so this is a great modification for anyone who's a little bit more challenged with balance on the feet. Otherwise, we'll do that same drill on your right foot. Right foot standing, hands on blocks, and I'm making a triangle with the blocks in my foot. It's a nice equilateral triangle here between blocks and foot. Left leg goes up back behind you, nice and tall, and then you open your pelvis and close the pelvis. Open the pelvis. Again, this can be on your all fours, close the pelvis. Now what's happening, when you open the pelvis, of course the top outer hip has to work to stay up nice and tall, but the standing outer hip right now eccentrically contracts to slow the movement down, concentric to open the pelvis. So the standing abductors are working to open the pelvis and close the pelvis. Open the pelvis, concentric contraction, eccentric to slow the pelvis rotation. You're gonna feel this as you go along. Your outer hips will be engaged. Okay, now before we move on to the second side, feel your outer hip muscles. You can probably feel them getting tired. Most of us think of abduction as the legs moving, but here the leg was fixed. And as a result, the leg being fixed, the pelvis actually moves. And the abductors always are just pulling the 2 attachment points toward each other. So if you look at my left leg for a second, my abductors, here's the greater trochanter, are attached to the pelvis. If they squeeze, it will open the pelvis up. Okay, so come onto your left side and let's activate the abductors, as a way of moving the pelvis rather than just moving the legs. Right leg goes back behind us. Squeeze the left hip to the right, and that will help you activate your abductors and open the hip and close the hip. Open and close. Try not to be doing this too much from your abdominal muscles. A lot of times the abdominals will try to take over and they'll, you're trying to twist your spine in order to move your pelvis. Move your pelvis from the muscles that create movement at the pelvis, which are, in this case, the muscles that create this movement are abductor muscles, the outer hip muscles. Also, try not to internally and externally rotate the right leg. Just let it go along from the ride, right? It's attached to the pelvis, so it'll stay there so long as your hip muscles are just toned and active. No movement needs to occur. All right. Stand on up. Feel the outer hip muscles. Feel the heat there. Let's do one more drill. This also could be done on all fours as well. So that would simply look like this. You'd be on hands and knees, no blocks needed. And you'll lift your left leg up and lower it. Up and lower, okay? If you feel confident, you can balance with your hands on blocks or even on a chair is great too. You'll open the pelvis, take the left leg up, lower it, and lift it. And this time, no rotation at all. So just let it be pure abduction. So you see my right hand is a little bit lower than the left. My left hand is kind of up on the knuckles here so that my torso can open a little bit. So I'm not totally twisted in the core. You could do this, of course, with your left hand on your hip. Just requires a little bit more balance. So that's an option for some of you. All right, switch it up. So now the standing hip is certainly participating in keeping the pelvis open, but the movement is now no longer opening and closing the pelvis. It's the movement of abducting the top leg. So the top abductors are going to work harder in this than the bottom. Of course, the bottom are working to keep your pelvis open. Okay, slowly lower. Let's get going. Abducting the top leg. All right. Let's do a nice little stretch. So you come down to all fours like so. Take your right knee behind the left and widen your feet away from each other. Sit back again onto a blanket is a great idea. Crisscrossing the legs like this will help stretch your outer hip muscles and your abductor, and your gluteus muscles. Gluteus maximus, which is an abductor, so not necessary to say. Anyway, bow forward. And you'll get piriformis as well. TFL, not so much. And the reason for that is because TFL is also a hip flexor, and we're in deep hip flexion, so it's not having to stretch that much. I should mention that if this is too much, there is the option to take the bottom leg straight, but now you try to align the right knee over. So this looks more like, I'll show you from this view, like so. Okay, rather the first one we did more like this. All right, that was that option. This one you're going knee across and bowing. All right, let's go up other leg. So from all fours, you'll cross your left knee behind, widen your feet, and sit back. Of Of course, this is going to get more of the rear fibers of gluteus medius and minimus. Once you get a lot of crisscrossing of the legs, you can get pretty deep. Then you'll get the middle fibers too. The front fibers, though, of gluteus medius and minimus, probably not stretching as much, though. Coming on up. Now we take half load of the fish's pose. We've done this before. Try to stretch the TFL a little bit more here, outer hips. So the right knee on bottom. And then the objective here is to actually lean away, and you might have to use your hands to just kind of keep the, I use my top knee to push the, top shin to push my right skin of my right knee out to the right as I lean to the right. I mean, you could use this as a side body stretch too, reaching the right arm over. That'll feel nice, not just, it'll pull on the fascia a little bit on the right hip too. But the objective is really to tilt the pelvis over to the left and keep the femur bone down to the right. We'll do the other side. So the top leg is just really to help keep this knee down as you lean over to the Let's do one hip flexor stretch, just to make sure TFL gets a little love too. So, a little hip flexor, if you internally rotate the leg, the back leg, and turn a little bit to the, so turn to your right, left leg is back behind you. And you might even, some of you might be able to come more to the outer edge of the back foot there, and see if you can kind of get the left hip down towards the ground. Coincidentally, the front leg is also getting a nice little outer hip stretch from turning. Okay. Let's try the other side. A little hip flexor stretch, Anjaneyasana, or almost like a lizard. Turning. I'm using the back leg, toes tucked to start, to reach the heel back to make sure I get a nice stretch there for myself. And then turning the leg. All right. Hope you enjoyed getting to know your abductors, the outer hip muscles. All right, I hope you've enjoyed the adventure of getting to know your abductor muscles, these outer hip muscles that take the legs apart and of course open the pelvis as well. Look forward to sharing more anatomy with you on the next one.